Hello to my fellow readers. Let's talk about what I read in August, and maybe you'll get a few good book recommendations that you can add to your TBR. August was my absolute favorite month for reading, and there are a few reasons for why that is. Mostly it was due to good books, but also I just had quality reading time. I've been ranting on this channel since its conception, basically, about how, like, I just never have time to read. I don't know how other people with jobs are reading at all. I don't know. I'm like, how the heck are people reading like 8 books a month? Where is the time? And then I just was like, you know what? I'm tired. Let me just make the time. So I've been waking up at like 5 and 6 a.m. in order to simply read. And let me tell you, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. If you feel similar to me, like, what the heck, I don't have time, I don't, maybe consider waking up an hour early. Maybe. This month, I read 7 books in total. I learned a couple new words. Hopefully, I can remember to put them in here. Cut to me putting them in here. Although I learned a lot more words than just the ones that I documented, but the ones that I documented were the ones that I had energy to know. On top of all of the like reading statistics, I hit 500 subscribers on this channel. Thank you. Oh my god. Thank you to all the people that have subscribed, that have like cared. Thank you to all of the commenters. It just means so much. Oh my god. If you haven't already, if you could please like, comment, or subscribe, it would mean so much and I would so appreciate you. Thank you so much to Bonnie Nicole who shouted me out. You're such a good book channel, and it means so much whenever I see the community. I'm like very hesitant to enter into community, so seeing community is like really cool. Okay. I read 3 nonfiction books and then 4 fiction books. I've been trying to push myself to read more nonfiction because, like, if we're not learning at the end of the day about the systems that we're in and the world around us, what are we doing? What are we doing? They say that, more and more we're less informed and we're just more and more wanting to be entertained. I think you can have a healthy dose of both. That's why I'm striving to read more nonfiction so I can actually educate myself. I will be going through the short descriptions as well as ranking all of the books that I read in more of like a longer review of these books, but I will not be ranking nonfiction because nonfiction is so hard to rank, especially when it comes to like a memoir. Like, here's the number I'm gonna give you out of 5 for your life story. That's so I'm going to attempt to, in one sentence, give you a synopsis of the book that I read. And then after I do that, we'll go into more in-depth details about the book and what I liked about it, what I didn't. Just so that you kind of know, like, oh, these are the books that you read this month. I'm not interested in them, or I am interested in hearing more about them. Fair? Is that fair? So, during August, George M. Johnson gave me a glimpse into his queer experience, being raised into a family that was accepting, but having to face society's backlash as to how they perceived his identity. Long sentence. A suspected sociopath showed me the lengths that she would go to rise to and retain her fame. Rejection. Oh, Rejection gave me 7 different fictional perspectives as to how people relate to and deal with rejection. Although it was fiction, it felt so real. It felt a little too real. I read one of the most popular thrillers that highlighted the vast contrast between extreme wealth and extreme poverty and how a maid plays a role into murder. Then John Green did in fact teach me that everything ties back to tuberculosis. Okay, so I almost completely forgot to mention that I read about the world's most prolific and successful art thief. Oh, and it gave me chills. It was amazing. And then I finished off the month with a 5-star read from YouTube's resident librarian himself, Mr. Jack Edwards. Thank you, Mr. Jack Edwards. Much appreciated. See, standing ovation even from the girl. I'm also doing I guess you would call it like a buddy read, but I'm reading a book with my husband. We fall asleep every night to an audiobook because those are so like delicate to just us. I won't be sharing those things. I'm just going to be sharing the things that I'm just doing on my own. First book we have is Make Me Famous by Maud Ventura. Highly anticipated read because the last book that Maud Ventura wrote that I read was very popular due to TikTok chatter. I read it, devoured it, loved it. I even have a video on it talking about how much I love it. And since that book was a 5-star, I was like, this is for sure going to be a 5-star. In fact, I have a video ranking my TBRs in terms of most to least anticipated, and I put this one on like assuming this was going to be a 5-star for sure. And unfortunately, it was not a 5-star. It was very enthralling and it really kept me entertained. And it was a quick read, but unfortunately, I had to give it. Well, what the heck? Let me tell you about this book before I give you an actual rating. This book follows this girl named Cleo Levant. She is I was gonna say a French girl, but she's half French, half American, but like it starts off in France. And she has all these major aspirations as to like what it would be like to be famous. Chases that dream for a while, ends up basically becoming famous, becoming all of her dreams. And we kind of see throughout her rise to fame, her unhingedness kind of coming out through that rise, and then also it sustaining as she is sustained. And it just is really interesting because I feel like there were so many moments in this book where if you ever watched Hannah Montana and wanted to be Hannah Montana, you could relate to some of these things that she's thinking, even though she's kind of a sociopath. The feelings of wanting to be famous are so well depicted in this, like in a way that feels like, shoot, clock me. The reason I couldn't give it the 5-star the way that I could give my husband the 5-star is because of how far the girl goes. Like it gets to a level that's kind of like outrageous. But I would recommend it to somebody who is interested in who liked the other book, My Husband. But I just will say it's not as good as My Husband, but like I'm not mad at it. Next we have Rejection by Tony Tulathimutte. This was the book that I woke up early to read every day for a week, and it made it so easy to want to get up and read this. Oh my goodness. Like I mentioned, this is a story based on 7 different perspectives of people going through different versions of rejection. Most of them are going to be like romantic rejection, of course. And I found that to be so interesting. I really yearn for these types of stories that are focused on like deeply embarrassing human experiences that we all are like hoping that somebody can just open up about. Even though this is fiction, it was so real that it could have been nonfiction. Although there were some chapters that were just far. I will say I gave this a 3.5 because there were some chapters where it just kind of felt like this is getting ridiculous. Like this is getting really far out there in a way that I don't think I can like even entertain. Um if you're aware, if you read the book, there was that one chapter where this guy has like an obsession with, you know, his own like kinks and fantasies, and he writes in a submission detailing his kinks and fantasies to have them made into like an actual production, and it just goes on for a little too long. And you know when the book goes on for a little bit too long, you're like, do I skip some paragraphs? That's what I was thinking. And I don't love when I'm doing that in a book, when I'm like, ugh. But like it really depends on it really depends on the perspective that you're looking at, but some perspectives to me were better than others. But the central theme and the way that it was written was very fast and easy to digest. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. Like I mentioned, this was a story about George M. Johnson himself. This is a memoir of his own about growing up Black and queer. I believe this was the 80s, and he comes from like more of an understanding background and more accepting of like him and his identity, but he details his experiences in such a really, I don't want to, I'm going to say a beautiful way, but it's also really tragic and filled with a lot of grief. The way that he describes his discomfort in knowing his sexuality but wanting to hide it out of like, you know, being unsafe, feeling unsafe. It was so eloquently written. It was so moving. It was so powerful. I really love when memoirs are just so strong and they really make you feel connected to the person who is in charge of the story, and they are also incredibly impressive. This was so incredibly impressive. I'm not rating this because it is nonfiction, but it was I I so enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. I recommend anybody to read it if you are interested. The Housemaid by Frieda McFaden. I was hesitant to read this because when it comes to books that are like this popular, they're gonna have to blow your mind. They're gonna have to blow your mind, or they're just an instant disappointment, which is tough. Like, it's really tough because then I go into it being like, okay, I expect this to be like Bible worthy. I do. I expect this to really knock me off my feet, and my socks. To me, this book lived up to the hype. I had this book under my category of my anticipated TBRs of excited due to the hype. And so I really didn't expect, honestly, a lot, because when a book is like just hyped up, it's like, okay, this is popular, but is it good? Things don't have to be good to be popular. And I found that out with Fourth Wing. Ever since Fourth Wing, I've been like, what the hell? But this was solidified great. This woman named Millie is looking for a housemaid job. She is incredibly impoverished, just really, really needs a job really bad. And she essentially runs into this couple, Nina and Andrew, who are incredibly wealthy. Because she has a record, it's really hard for her to get a job. She's currently living in her car, so she needs this job really bad. She ends up getting the job, but there are some really unfortunate things that happen to her and around her, and it's one of those things where you're like, is this real, or can I not trust the narrator in this story? Honestly, this story gave me chills because it made me viscerally uncomfortable, the way a good thriller should. It made me like on edge for her because she needed this job for her survival. She got it, but it's like, at what cost? I gave this a 4 out of 5. I thought it was good. I did. I thought it was good, but I heard the next book is not as good. I heard that it was kind of like, it kind of simmers down. I don't think I'll be reading the next book. I just didn't find a need to. I didn't have the interest to like keep this going. I cannot wait though for the movie to come out. I'm genuinely really excited because the cast looks stellar. We'll see. I'm gonna see it. I can't wait. Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This is one of those books I was like, I'm either going to really connect with this because I like John Green a decent amount, or this is going to be incredibly boring and I'm gonna fall asleep, and it's gonna be hard for me to get through because nonfiction in relation to like medical information is not that exciting. But the way that John Green wrote this was essentially he was visiting a hospital in, I think it was Sierra Leone. Where was it? Where was it? I can't remember where. But he was visiting a hospital with an idea of something that he didn't end up doing, but he ran into this child who had tuberculosis, and then it kind of got him thinking about the idea of tuberculosis. It got him kind of going into research about tuberculosis, and he realized a lot of things, most things in life, you can tie back to tuberculosis. Did you know that in the Guinness Book of World Records, tuberculosis is the world's oldest contagious disease? If you would ask me, hey, what's the world's oldest contagious disease? I don't know what I would have spit out. Gun to my head, no idea. But it's tuberc. People who have died of tuberculosis, I have to read off my notes. Louis the 13th, Henry the 7th, Eleanor Roosevelt, George Orwell. But one of the most fascinating things that he brought up was, although so many people have gotten tuberculosis and it seems to affect the poor and the wealthy in very similar rates, and it was a slowly killing disease, nobody knew really what caused it or the proper treatment. In relation to like the broad scheme of diseases and sicknesses, do you know how many people die of disease? Like, what is the percentage of people who die of disease? Guess. 90%. 90%? What?
Is that not a little too high? That's crazy. I feel like if you had gun to my head again, gun to my head, how many people die of disease? 60. I dead. Also, what really stood out to me about this book was not only giving, you know, like facts and statistics about tuberculosis, is also the idea of the either romanticization of tuberculosis or the stigma of tuberculosis attached to it. One of the things that I myself even have thought that I think has been planted because like this is very popular in literature is the idea that, you know, people look beautiful when they're sick because they get thin and they look really pale. But that is, the tie is directly, well, not directly, it's kind of indirectly to what John Green himself has brought up as like whiteness and colonialism. The idea that being beautiful and like getting sick with tuberculosis and being viewed as like, oh, she's so delicate, she's so sickly, she's so blah blah blah, he's so brilliant, and yet he's frail, he's passing away, is in relation to you viewing like an attractive white person with tuberculosis and romanticizing that sickness, when it's like that's just a sickness that's like killing them. That's not something to be admired or sought after. Tuberculosis, from the places that he was going, produced a lot more of a stigma. It's not to say that it's only, you know what I mean, like it's not to say that it's only like, oh, white people with tuberculosis is just straight romantic, it's just romantic, but it's like more of the idea of sickness being tied to beauty is in relation to thinness and paleness, versus stigma, places where it's more stigmatized, is like you just only get the idea of, oh, it's contagious, I'm gonna die, I need to stay away from the person with tuberculosis. I don't know who that was. The stigma that ties in with tuberculosis is just simply viewing it as a sickness and being very afraid of the sickness, but then also the people who inhabit the sickness. As opposed to when you're romanticizing tuberculosis, it's the idea of having the good qualities of getting sick. Wow. Phenomenal book. I'm not rating this, of course, because it is nonfiction, but it was so good, so enjoyable in a way I did not expect. I really do struggle with things in this realm, but the way that it was written was so easy to follow. It was great. Okay, and then we have Evenings and Weekend by Oisin. I think it's Oisin Mckenna, which I only know because Jack Edwards pronounced it. I would have said Oisin if I had not known. So Evenings and Weekends follows a couple of different perspectives, but the main perspective is on this girl. What the heck is her name? You ever like just read a book and somebody asks you to describe it and you're like, it's about this person, they meet another person and they go through events. Like, I swear I read it. I want to say her name is Maggie, but I don't even think that that's right. Her name is Maggie. Okay. The story starts off with Maggie and Ed. Maggie, a lovely girl. They're also set in the UK. This is in the UK. Maggie and Ed are a young couple, and I think that they're either in their late 20s or early 30s, and they are met with an unplanned pregnancy that they are not equipped to deal with. The book starting off with this unplanned pregnancy, as well as a whale sighting that like is like kind of crazy. That's like the topic of conversation for all of these different perspectives. It like pulls the book together and is really interesting and feels very modern to like have a topic be about like, oh, did you see the whale stuck on, you know, this, whatever. So Maggie, unexpectedly pregnant, has a boyfriend, Ed, not a really responsible guy, seems very lost. And throughout the book, like at first I wanted to villainize him, and then you get to know him more and more, and you're seeing just the real human flaws that he has, and you can't villainize him really that much anymore because you see him battling. But there are some really like bad things that happen with Ed. Like I mentioned, there are other perspectives. Ed has a best friend named Callum. We see a little bit of Callum's story in this. Callum has a brother named Phil. Phil is my favorite person in a book that I've read for like these past couple months. Phil is haha the token gay. Just kidding, he's not the token gay. He's like, he actually has a lot of depth in this book, and he's really interestingly written. Phil is also Maggie's best friend. It's a lot of things to keep up with, but Phil is kind of coming to terms with his place in life as somebody who's in his, I can't remember if he's in his early 30s or what, in his early 30s, craving monogamy, craving things that are kind of traditional, but at the same time kind of being placed in a position where he might be, the option for him might just be this place that he's in where he's seeing somebody who's in an open relationship. Oh, decisions are being made about the future, and yet everyone is unsure about the future. This is a book focused on introspection, grief, humor, social commentary, and those are the things that I look for. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, will recommend, will always recommend. And I read this because Jack Edwards put it in his book club, and I'm excited to look at everybody else's thoughts. And I also, I already looked at the interview on Spotify a little, but I haven't finished it.
I don't really know how I forgot this one because the book was so great that I would categorize it under unforgettable. So the fact that I forgot it is a little bit ridiculous because I enjoyed it so much. This book was focused on the most successful kind of prolific art thief. His name was Stefan Breitwieser. I read this through audio and it was so enthralling. I do have a problem with like history, medical, anything, but all of these nonfiction books that I read were so easy to keep up with and so highly entertaining. Breitwieser was an art thief who was most active in the 90s. If you had told me to guess when the most prolific art thief had existed, you would guess like a very low security time. I mean, clearly the 90s was a low security time in the places that he hit and stole from. But I would have guessed, if you had told me, like, guess the timing, I would have said maybe 1700s, maybe 18, maybe. But I would not have guessed 1990s. So he was somebody who studied, I believe it was like museum security. So he kind of knew about how to get in and out through museums and places to steal art. So it wasn't like it was just any random person just picking up art in low security places, not knowing what they were doing. But his story is very interesting. He stole not to just resell, he stole out of passion. And it is really confusing because he also wasn't wealthy himself. He lived with his mom and his girlfriend was his kind of accomplice throughout a lot of these things. And the way that he got caught was seemingly by it. He should not have got caught the way that he did. I feel like he was getting a little bit like messy with it at the end of his career, but it could have gone on a long time if he hadn't made silly little mistakes. But it was very fascinating to read about. And honestly, it was one of those books where I felt for him and the state of his mind to where he felt genuinely like he needed to steal for survival, for something psychologically that told him it was worth stealing and not just for money. So I do have to respect that idea that if you are an art thief, he simply stowed them away like in his basement. He didn't steal anything for like thousands or millions of dollars, but he could have, which is crazy. Anyway, that is The Art Thief. I can't give it anything because it is a nonfiction. I highly, highly recommend.
So that's all I read in August. Such a good month for reads. Even though I had like a decent amount of 3.5, ending on a 5-star, I think is like, let me know what you read. Let me know what TBR that you have. Are you in a book club? I tried to join a book club, but I found that like a lot of people were not really focused on the book and they wanted to talk about like their neighbor's dog. And I'd be like, I don't care about your neighbor's dog. Can we get into chapter 3 of the book? So maybe one day I'll try another one, like a real life in-person one. But thank you so much for joining me on this video. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is. I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, or night.